Hi, my name's Rob Scott from UC Today News. Hope you're doing well. So today I'm joined by Tim Jalland from VOSS, and we're going to be discussing fast-tracking enterprise voice to Microsoft Teams. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, Rob.
Good to see you again. Thanks for joining me today. Just before we dive in, however, do you want to just give us a quick introduction, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at VOSS, please?
I can do, yeah, thanks, Rob. So I'm a solution manager working at VOSS. I look after our Microsoft portfolio, broadly around our management and collaboration suite of products and solutions. And I work with partners globally, partners and customers, in terms of helping them design, build and roll out collaboration solutions within their organization.
Fantastic, thanks for that. And so today we're going to talk about enterprise voice. But just beforehand, I'd like to kind of just set the scene a little bit, Tim, if you can, for us. I mean, when enterprises talk about enabling voice in Microsoft Teams, typically what outcomes are they looking for?
Yeah, good question to start with, Rob. I think the best way to answer that, let's just look back a little. Last 18 months, we've seen organisations, for reasons, having to really push out remote and flexible working. And they've done that by deploying collaboration solutions, particularly like Microsoft Teams, around their organisations, so employees can be productive, communicate, chat, call, meetings, and the like around that. I wouldn't say it's tactical, but it was done really quickly, and it's been quite successful in terms of helping those organisations operate. But they're at a point now, sort of a bit of a checkpoint, whereby looking forward, they're reassessing their plans in terms of where they invest for growth, and particularly around collaboration suites, where they can drive productivity gains within their organisation, and also start to bring some of the applications around their organisation into the Microsoft Suite platform that they've built as a foundation on their collaboration suite. So they're looking at that right now. One of the obvious candidates for that is enterprise telephony or voice. These organisations run fairly separate platforms at the moment, quite significant platforms for their enterprise telephony services. And they're looking as to, can I consolidate that back onto my Microsoft Teams platform? What I'm looking for in terms of coming back to outcomes on that, what I'm looking for is a single tool really for my employee base, whereby they can do all the things they have been doing already, chatting, calling and meetings, but also extend that out now from a single tool for enterprise telephony as well. So obviously looking to drive productivity gains off that. But interestingly, it also supports hybrid working as well. If you look at organisations' enterprise telephony, they were in offices with phones on desks and things like that. That's a lot less relevant now with flexible and hybrid working. They can bring that all into a single consolidated Microsoft tools, Microsoft Teams client. They've got a single tool people can use from their desktop. So that's one of the outcomes organisations are looking for. I think off the back of that a little, maybe just talk about employee experience. It's just a good experience for people within the organisation working. They've got one tool they can go to and do all their collaboration needs now. So existing employees, but also attracting new employees into the organisation as well. The experience and the collaboration suite around that organisation, is on some people's minds when they're looking for new roles in organisations. So I think that's the outcome people are looking for now as they look to invest for growth, invest in Microsoft Teams, start to bring the voice in there. The maybe last just quick thing to mention on this is, one of the corollaries of this is there is some obviously cost savings and rationalisation. If you're taking the existing platform, moving that onto Teams, you don't need that existing platform anymore. There's some good cost savings on that front, and it also obviously aligns quite nicely with the move to the cloud, which a lot of organisations are looking at now. So there's a lot of good reasons and outcomes why organisations are looking to take their existing, somewhat legacy standalone platforms for telephony and move that onto Microsoft Teams.
Okay, so when making the move, I mean, how slow and complex can the process be? Could you kind of just talk us through kind of maybe what some of the common challenges are that might affect that, the migration or the process?
Good. Another good question, Rob. The results obviously good. People have got good experiences with cloud-based telephony and on Microsoft Teams. Organisations know where they're trying to get to, but the obvious challenging question is where am I starting from? A lot of these old legacy PBX systems have been around for some time. The configuration's been around for some times. There's several of them potentially around the organisation, and we're looking to consolidate all that. So one of the immediate challenges or questions is, just what have I got in terms of a voice service right now? Some of that might be obvious in terms of employees within the organisation, but some of the more interesting pieces in terms of how telephony calls coming into the organisation are handled. Some of the adjacent services like applications, call recording, fax machines, elevators and things like that, some of those things aren't immediately obvious, and just getting insight into what I've got right now and where am I starting from is one of the immediate challenges that organisations face. But that aside, once you get some insight into that, the whole transformation process then to take it from an older system into something that's relatively modern up on the cloud, that whole transformation process isn't necessarily that straightforward. Not all the features map like for like. They need level of redesign or transformation. That involves skilled staff, and you see quite a lot of PowerShell scripting and large Excel spreadsheets and things like that floating around organisations. And certainly with the people we've been working with, that's not really very scalable or very predictable in terms of running a well-contained migration process for organisations. So, hopefully that gives a little bit of insight into the challenges that organisations when they want to get on this journey phase, and the journey is important. So, getting around those challenges is also important.
Yeah, it's interesting, and enterprises are inherently complex, aren't they? And I can't imagine all these implementations go well. So, what kind of outcomes do you typically see?
Well, a range, I think, is probably the answer to that, Robin. You sort of categorise these a little into, some of the good things going on, but also some of the challenges and some of the, somewhat horror stories we've seen around, working with partners and organisations. I think inevitably a lot of these organisations, when they get into the migration journey of moving their telephony voice services up onto Microsoft Teams, the projects are long and they run for a period of time, so some won't get tired. But in terms of maybe just start with a few good points on there, the general quality and experience on the Microsoft Teams service with telephony, the general feedback and people that do get there, pilot departments and things like that, is good. So the end result's good. It's sort of managing that process and getting there. And we see a lot of organisations attempting that with, somewhat manual methods. The projects tend to be long, and they keep skilled staff on those projects for quite a long period of time. You can't use them on more strategic activities. They're doing data management sort of through the process. So pins key staff down during what is a fairly long, as I say, tired project is one of these sort of bad outcomes that we often see within organisations. And inevitably that results, with a lot of manual touch points and involves a lot of niggles sort of post-migration. Which generate a lot of support calls into the IT help desk. So that's never great. And, off the back of that impacts back on the employee experience. And if you're not careful, you get into, which is sort of the ugly side on this, you end up with a somewhat downward spiral where you're getting an increasing number of support and niggles. The employee experience isn't good, and that's starting to get shared around the organisation, and that sort of plays off on other people then, and it's a downward spiral with a sort of negative tone around it. But the projects tend to then become very late, quite over budget, and we've seen one or two get paused or cancelled, so the organisations aren't getting the benefits out of what they thought they were going to do when they set off on that journey. So that's sort of played out a little bit, but that's sort of bad and the ugly side of some of these migration projects that we get into.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned employee experience. I think that's super important in today's world. We're hearing so much, or more and more about it all the time. Just getting it right for the employee, and that will help with retention and productivity and everything else. So I think the gains are huge.
It really does. Yeah, it really does. It's interesting. You get into a either an upward positive spiral, as we call it, where the journey's going well, the feedback's good, it sort of self-reinforces within the organisation, the project gets quicker. But the converse is equally apparent in several of these migration projects as well. It's a downward spiral, and the project gradually gets tired and grinds to a halt. So yeah, very key, the sort of employee experience along the journey.
Indeed. So let's talk about VOSS, and how you're helping your customers be successful and deploy Teams telephony or enterprise voice at pace? Because I think
Mm.
speed is and efficiency is obviously a priority as much as getting it right is. So can you talk us through how you're helping your customers?
Yeah, I can do, Rob. Yeah, pace is important here. Once an organisation, so they've got the Teams platform deployed within their organisation, it's a good foundation to bring other applications onto. Once they've made that decision that they want to bring telephony onto that, single tool for their whole collaboration suite and sort of rationalize up their existing platforms. Once they've made that call, they really want to get to that point, start to realize the benefits as quickly as they can. And it's a competitive world out there, so the quicker they can get to that point, all the better. Really, we put in the mix here, look at how we sort of manage and sort of the aspects of the migration projects we work with partners and customers on. There's obviously a good element. We've run these projects, quite successfully with large organisations over a fairly long history and period of time. So there's a level of skill in here. But I think importantly, we support this with some fairly comprehensive migration tooling to somewhat mechanise the process on that journey. And we build quite a high level of automation in here. To really help standardise and take out the errors and issues and make that transformation from an older platform up onto Microsoft Teams, efficient and in line with what organisations are looking for. So it's a mix of that. But in terms of the approach itself, maybe just spend a little bit of time on that. And I think we'll maybe just, if we could pop a slide up, Rob, at this point for a minute or two, just to talk through the steps on here. We've got 3 steps really in terms of the approach we go through. There's a step really getting into and understanding where an organisation's starting from, so we don't miss anything. And that's really, key points about that really are having something that's not disruptive. So we're moving this service while it's still operating, so it needs to be non-disruptive. Pull out and do an audit on the existing service and configuration, and then really use that for migration considerations and planning. So that first discovery stage is super critical in terms of the planning for the project itself. But post that, we take all that configuration data, we normalize that. There's quite a lot of it. It's all in quite a nice SQL database. That gives the ability to build relationships and sort of look across that. But we're then working with an organization and just working how they want to map that service and transform it and move the telephony up onto Microsoft Teams. So that's all around the automation tooling that we provide as part of the project. And off the back of that, then we'll schedule that in terms of batches, sort of fairly mechanized or automated batches to take groups of users across from the existing service in terms of voice and telephony and move that up onto Microsoft Teams. So that's the sort of middle step in here around the actual migration itself. But the final step on here is, I think we see these equally as important as well. Organisations want to be involved. They want some visibility and insight into, what's going on with the migration project. So we provide a self-service portal here whereby they can look at the telephony service as it's being migrated and transformed. They can see it on the old platform. They can see services moving across onto Microsoft Teams Voice and sort of watch that migration process and sort of be involved as part of the project. With a point that we leave them with that, post-migration, so they've got quite a nice portal to manage all their enterprise telephony needs on Microsoft Teams Voice, but also if they've got some adjacent services as well, they manage that all through a single portal or pane of glass, as we call it. So that's the 3 steps we normally go through with an organisation. It's sort of around the discovery, it's around the automated migration, and then it's leaving them in a good position really to manage that self-service, once the service has been moved up to Microsoft Teams.
And by following that process, I'm assuming that really helps you to kind of pick up the momentum of these projects, because that's, it can be a real crippler, can't it, for enterprises if they get any of that wrong. It can really, affect the pace of the project.
It can do. Yes, it can do. We've seen projects and had projects quoted. They could be, large organisation, 18-month projects. That's a long time to run a project, and people get really tired through that duration. Yeah. But for a 3-step approach like this with a good level of automation in here, we've pulled that back to under 6 months. We've done the discovery within the first matter of weeks, really. As soon as we can get an export from the existing system, and run the audit across that, we can get a good picture of where we're starting from, within the first few weeks on the project, and we get the whole piece completed within 6 months. So it really drives speed through the project, and it's done in a way that's automated and mechanised. So there's the number of errors or manual touch points is taken out, so it's quite efficient in terms of how we're moving that across. So time to benefit's key on here, and that's one of the key aspects behind the approach.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. However, if you're interested in finding out more, there's a link in the description, and do visit the VOSS Solutions website for more information about how they're helping enterprises to move to enterprise voice in Microsoft Teams. Hey, Tim, thanks very much. Great to see you again today.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
And thanks to everyone for watching UCTV. If you've got some good takeaways from today's session, do give us a quick mention on social and subscribe to our channel for more industry news and insights. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.